Welcome to Deal Talk. My name is Jeffrey Veit, and we're talking about buying cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, motorhomes, whatever, how to get through it with the best possible deal and no tricks. At least no tricks you aren't aware of. I mean, as long as you know they're pulling the trick, you can fight it, right? You can do things and say, hey, we'll just do this and block them off with that and whatever. That's what we talk about. Over the last couple of episodes, we've talked about buying used. Part 1 was late model used, CPO. Part 2, which was last week, was about the cheaper used in some special categories. But cheaper vehicles, because that's all a little different market, a little different way to buy. It was all different things to consider. You know, the basics like look for the vehicle avoiding price discussions at that point. That's in common with new. Any vehicle you look for, you got to look first and not talk about price while you're looking. Verify it has the equipment you need. New or used doesn't make any difference. Even if you buy a cheap used car, there's certain basic equipment you have to have. Like if you have 3 kids and there's 2, you and your wife, you got to have 5 seatbelts. So that would be equipment you have to have. If you live in the South, you have to have air. You know, you might have to have automatic, you might not. But verify it has the right equipment. Check the Carfax even on an old vehicle. Yep. You don't want to buy an old vehicle, looks fine, and then it wears out tires faster than, at high speed because the frame's bent. Always test drive the vehicle. Always, always, always. On an older used car, test drive it longer. Give it a chance to heat up. See if there's something long-term. Drive it 15 minutes. If it's a new vehicle, you don't need to do that much, but you need to drive it for a while. In, high speed, low speed, whatever. Check for flood. Every vehicle. I don't care if it's a $2,000 used on up to a brand new vehicle, you don't have to check. Brand spanking new. But you know what? You think, well, a flood, what difference does it make on a $2,000 vehicle? It make a lot of difference because flood vehicles have problems consistently. And, if you're going to spend $2,000 on a vehicle, you don't have the money, obviously, to spend more. Well, you can't afford to buy a piece of junk. There's going to be a lot of problems, so stay away from flood if you can help it. Use a sea lawyer. Get an inspector to look it over, especially if you're buying from an individual. Look at the vehicle before you buy it. With a dealer, you can make an agreement with them. Hey, look, I'm going to have my tech look at it, put it on the buyer's order, and if he finds something seriously wrong, you're going to take care of it. And the dealer signs it, and you have that proof. With an individual, once you buy it, you're out of luck. That's it. You own it. So that's another one that we talked about. And prepare for the negotiation and a bunch of other stuff. We covered a lot. But that was the last couple of weeks. I saw this great chart this week for used buying or even consideration. It's a great chart. You can make one. It's 2 lines crossing, forming 4 sectors. And they would maybe be 6-inch lines, 2 of them. They make an X. You've got 4 sectors now. The vertical line is maintenance, the maintenance cost. From the low is at the top, and then high, maintenance cost is at the bottom. And the horizontal line represents if it's reliable. To the left, it's not reliable. To the right, it's reliable. Segment 1, the top left, would be one segment. Segment 2 is the top right. Segment 3 is the bottom left. And segment 4 is the bottom right. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. You also have an outside border that surrounds each segment, making them squares. So now you have 4 squares. Preferably for writing room. Each line is 6 inches long, making each square 3 by 3. You got room to scribble on a note. At 1.5 inches from the middle, you put a dot on each line. You can connect the dot straight, or you can go out and down and make smaller squares, or you could just cut across straight and make like a piece of a pie, right? Now you can place makes in different spots, each segment having an inner and outer portion. For instance, in my chart, if I was to do it, in segment 1, right, that's top left, the outside would be Chrysler, Chevy, Kia, Hyundai. And on the inside of segment 1, a little closer to the center, would be Ford, Cadillac, Nissan, and Tesla. Now segment 2, on the inside, would be Lincoln, Subaru, and Buick. And on the outside would be a Toyota, Honda, Lexus, Mazda. Now you'll notice that that's towards the more reliable and the less expensive to maintain. And that's why And they're in the way far right on segment 2. Segment 3, which is the square in the bottom left, outside of that little piece of pie you made would be Volvo, Dodge, and Jeep. Spend more expensive to service and not as reliable for sure. And the inside would be VW, GMC, and Mini. Then on segment 4, outside of segment 4's piece of pie, outside of it where the maintenance is really expensive, would be Mercedes, BMW, Audi, because they are expensive. But they'd be on the right on 4 because they're still reliable. They're just expensive to service. And on inside of that little segment 4, then in the piece of pie would be Acura. Now you take that little chart and you look at it. The chart gives a great picture of the resale and quality market. It was just a great idea. I wish I could say I thought of it, but I didn't. No, it's a good chart. And that's a good way to look at it. So you can take and see a picture. Sometimes, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can see where things fall in the chart. If you like the show, please take a couple of minutes and do a review on iTunes or Google Play, whichever you use. If you have already done a review, thanks. Don't forget to tell your friends and relatives about the podcast. They'll send you them money, and you'll be a hero. That's always cool to be a hero, right? Those of you who would like some written material to carry with you when you're out shopping, then get a copy of The Informed Buyer from Amazon Kindle, Barnes & Noble. Some people on Barnes & Noble have been buying it lately because they contacted me about it, so there's been a lot of Barnes & Noble action. There's always some on Amazon, so they're so big, They'll give you the basics for quick reference when you're in the buying process. Best of all, best part, $3. It was $3 in 2015 when I started this podcast, and it's still $3. $3, that's what it costs. It has been and will stay at $3. Anyway, moving right along, there are many ways that vehicles are sold by dealers trying to control the purchase process. You've been to tons of dealers in your time, maybe not. But dealers, the first thing they do is try to take what they call control. They want to control the deal. They want to control what goes on so they can control you buying from them or not, they think. One process method has become popular and has roots in almost every city in the nation. One price, a.k.a. no haggle. This market we're in is actually promoting the growth of one price, right? Buy it or get the hell out. That's about their attitude on new vehicles. They're so short supply. Their attitude is really, they're not working to get your business as hard as they would. The management. The salespeople are always going to work because that's how they get paid, but the management. And that's what you need. You need the management working on it because they're the ones that control the price. Lack of inventory gives the seller strength. You'd think that the lack of inventory, they're down. No, that actually gives them strength on each individual deal because you don't buy it, there's 4 or 5 other people that will. How it works with one price is that a particular dealership has a one price label on the vehicle for each vehicle they sell, and it's not negotiable. They'll not haggle. Every customer pays the same price for each specific model and options. The only thing that won't be on it, you might have an addendum label next to it saying add for this stripe and molding or whatever not. But on the vehicle itself, it'll have one price, which supposedly in some states is supposed to include the dealer fee. So by law in Florida, and I don't know that many dealers do it, but the price that they put on the window is supposed to include the dealer fee. And at some dealerships, that's a lot of money. A Ford store around the corner from me, it's like $1,200. Crazy money. Yeah, it's like, for nothing. It's $1,200 just because they can try to convince the public that they're doing something for it. They aren't doing anything for it. You don't take your eggs to the diner and pay extra for them cooking them. No, you buy your breakfast at the diner, and they cook it. They don't charge you anything for cooking it. No. Well, that's the same thing. Car dealers try to charge for washing the car and getting it ready, and it's ridiculous. But in some states, they get away with it. There's a whole list of states. Every state has controlled. That's one of the few things that New York does. Well, I shouldn't say few things, but because the Attorney General there in the past was a pretty good guy. He was on top of his toes. Now not doing so well up there with the Attorney General, but they used to have a good one. And the dealer fee is regulated at $75, which is okay. $75 you can justify for doing the paperwork and stuff for some person to be paid in the back office. You don't get mad about that. But when a dealer charges $1,200 or $900 or $800, that's crazy money. And they do it for some reason. But anyway, that one price will be included in the label, but you'll have one price on there. Every customer pays the same price. I'm not sure who was the first dealer to do this, but in the 60s and 70s, Volkswagen dealers would declare that their vehicles were fair trade. And if you wanted to buy a Beetle in those times, they wouldn't give you any discount at any store in the country. No matter what store you went to, it was the same price because it was regulated by the factory. And that's why they did not discount them or negotiate, because the factory would stop giving the dealer cars, which is not legal, but they did it. And it got changed. Price was controlled by the factory. Volkswagen was forced to stop. But fair traded as a rule for their dealers eventually got legal intervention. There were many dealers that wanted to discount or offer some sort of deal or at least bargain, and deal in volume, sell the cars for a little less and get increased volume. But they had to wait until the law got involved. And at that point, the factory couldn't penalize you anymore for it. And that's what they were doing. The main difference in the method is that VW used it at a factory level. They did one price from a factory level from Volkswagen. Saturn, if you remember them, that was a GM company, did the same thing with numbers of years later. They would try to regulate the price. They're gone now. It's funny how people try to control things, and when you try to control things, you're the one that ends up getting controlled. But now it's almost always a technique used in the dealer's discretion. Well, it's not anything that's done by the manufacturer. It's always done by the dealer now. There are many dealers who use it as in their approach to try and win your business. CarMax, some AutoNation stores are one price. In fact, almost all of them use a one price style. And there are thousands of other dealers that use some form of it in their marketing. I mean, what is one price selling? You might wonder, what does it mean and how do they arrive at their prices? Simply put, the one price sales, also known as no haggle method, and you, the buyer, supposedly does not need to negotiate. They offer a vehicle at a set price based on what they say and have determined as their lowest minimum price, which is just a made-up price of what they think they can get away with all of them. It's got no basis of fact at all, right? It's funny but that's how they do it. They're declaring an average or a minimum of their sales price. But true one price started as a dealership-wide process. Everything in the dealership, for the culture to really work the way it's supposed to work, a one-price store should be one price everywhere, in every department. Service, parts, everything. Doesn't make a difference. Shouldn't be any, processing at all. It's all one price. Actually, it's a sales technique that's founded on the concept of duping people to believe it's a super price when actually, in almost every case, the best you're going to get at a one-price store is ho-hum price. That would be the best, right? Each buyer gets the same price that everybody else gets. The idea of not having to haggle to get a good price appeals to many people, but the dupe that it's a super deal is not true. Same price has nothing to do with best price. Just because you get the same price as someone else doesn't mean that you got the best price. It just means you got the same price as someone else. You may have gotten hosed just like the other guy did, and that's what it amounts to. At a one-price store, there's no negotiating on the price of the vehicle. Nope. You pay the posted price or walk. And they have to stick pretty much to that rule because that would be fake advertising. I know dealers that have, fluctuated the dealer fee with customers and other customers they didn't and got fined. Right here in Orlando, I knew a dealer got fined $400,000 just because he left the dealer fee off of some. They can discount the vehicle in equal amount to the dealer fee, but they can't take that off the order if they're charging everybody else. And at one price, you pay the posted price or walk. Wow. Does that seem a bit odd to you? The only thing negotiable in a one-price store might be the value of your trade. That's something that's not regulated. Or the finance rate. Or most of them aren't fixing the prices, aren't one price when it comes to the options in the F&I office, like rust proofing or paint sealant or, extended warranties are already one price. That just happens to be the way the law works in Florida for extended warranties. But other states, you can negotiate even on an extended warranty. I mean, who does all this benefit? What is all this for? I mean, it makes you think, I'll go to one price store. I don't have to go through all that stuff. Well, you don't have to go through that stuff, but it's not the way you go to get a good deal. If you don't care about the deal, just go to any store and just say, I'll take it. If you don't care about what you paid. If there are vehicles sold at lower prices somewhere else, and you can be sure there are, then it definitely does not benefit the buyer, one price. It does avoid any time you might spend haggling by drawing a firm line in the sand, for sure. If you go online and read industry articles about one-price dealerships, you'll see that primarily the benefits are to the dealer. Yeah, the dealer is the one that really benefits from one price. Number one, recruiting and training salespeople is much easier. They don't need to be trained about handling negotiations. In fact, they require less training in almost all areas. Sales skills, product knowledge, competition awareness. It's a pretty much there it is, yes or no, saving workforce. That's the way it is. They're saving the overhead of all that training and personnel. Another reason is because the simplification of the deal pricing for the dealer. Store operations require a smaller amount of management staff. Each deal has less variables, so less management is needed. Again, saving overhead. According to the experts in the automobile industry, profits per unit usually go up when a dealer adopts a one-price strategy because the average profit is higher. They are all the needed average profit. That's why dealers go with it. And there aren't that many dealers going with it. I mean, there's quite a few, but there's every town, I think, every town in America, if the population's over 1,000, has a dealership that's one price. Yep, I'll guarantee you. One of them. Maybe all of them. I know dealers that own every dealership in town, and they're all one price. And if that isn't collusion, nothing is. I don't know, but there's other reasons. There aren't any no-profit or low-profit deals would be another reason. Some deals are actually higher than most because of a couple of other issues. There's other things that take place. One reason is that it doesn't make the sales process, difficult. It's or at least timely. It's a faster process because you've got the one price, and less time on negotiating allows you to go into the F&I office and spend more time with the business manager that does your paperwork. Why, he hammers you to buy a bunch of stuff, which takes place in every store in the country. The paperwork guy, right? He always tries to twist your arm into buying something. It's good to listen to him because you never know when you might hear something that's good. But their price is always ridiculous. So if you found out something you want to buy, you can just shop it before you go to the dealership. If you know you're going to be buying some accessories, shop their prices before you get there. Once you have a price that's better, they're very negotiable. Like I said before, it requires about 50% less management to control the sales floor. That means lower payroll. That's a big one for a dealer. Less insurance, benefits, a bunch of stuff. And the management are the ones that are highest priced, are highest paid, right? The experts in surveys say that the people who do buy using one price sales technique, 25% of them are happy with that process, right? Most of the people that do buy in a one price store are the type that don't care what they pay within reason, as long as everyone pays the same price and they don't have to discuss the price. It's kind of I don't know what you'd call that, a progressive attitude. I don't care if I don't get a good price, but I don't want him to have one. I don't care. I don't know if you feel that way, but when I buy, I want to get the best possible deal I can get regardless of what anyone else gets. I want to be the example, not the lesson. That's for sure. One price is all about what is good or convenient for the dealership. That's what it's about. You thinking by the advertising, oh, what a great guy, get you the price right on the window, you don't have to haggle. That's got nothing to do with a good price. Nothing. It has nothing to do with it. It isn't about making the customer happier at all. That's not the reason they do it. It's there. And people take advantage of it. Some do. Some are happier in a small group and actually like the blind purchase process. When some are in a small group that like the one price process. I mean, people are all over when it comes to that. There's been a lot of studies done about one price selling. They all had about the same result. One of the well-known ones is by the During Corporation. They're famous for their studies, being accurate. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know that I can tell you what they said. I don't know how accurate they are. I'm not selling During, that's for sure. Of all buyers everywhere, all types of dealerships, they found that 75% of all buyers polled negotiated their purchase. So 3 out of 4 people negotiate, but 25% did not. But keep in mind, of that 25%, that includes sale price units, leases, which don't get negotiated as much. They're part of that 25%, and then you've got one-price dealers. Obviously, that means that actual one-price sales accounts for about a small percentage. Yeah, it's not a big percentage of the business. A lot of people go there, but they don't end up buying. 65% of all buyers like the process they chose. So when interviewed, the public says, well, when we finally bought, we liked the process. Well, of course you did, because you bought. And you felt like you won. And that's the dealers that win are the ones that make people feel like they won. And 4 out of 5 liked their deal, right? 4 out of 5. 75% of the people who negotiated were satisfied with their deal. That's 75% of the 75% were satisfied, or about 60% of all sales. If During is correct, that 75% of the people that negotiated liked their deal, and only 25% of one-price buyers liked their deal. That's a good comparison. Because what happens in a one-price situation is it's very friendly and good, but other things happen. Things go on in that process that you don't necessarily think about, you haven't considered. In fact, many one-price buyers were neither satisfied or unsatisfied. They don't know what to think, during a survey. So, you could be one of the ones that went there, bought a vehicle at one price, and there was no satisfaction or not. It was like buying a can of peas off the shelf in the grocery store, right? Of all buyers groups polled, 48% of buyers like to haggle. 33% preferred to buy a sale price or something that was, that didn't need to be haggled, but ended up not doing it. And 19% had no preference. If the deal is a deal, from the due diligence when you use Deal Talk. That's an important part. How you would know what to do in due diligence is the facts, which, if you use my methods, should be the case. You'll know whether you got a good deal or not. When I mentioned possible higher than average prospects earlier in the podcast, here's what I meant. Well, that's what we were just talking about. One serious point about the one-price process, and no dickering to begin with, is it can cause buyers to drop their guard. And because they drop their guard, a one-price store can take advantage of other parts of the sale, like finance at a higher rate, or push accessories and add-ons more because you trust them. You can trust us, just like the one price. We wouldn't take advantage of you, right? And some dealers can do that. They can, pat you on the back with one hand and pick your pocket with their other hand. That's just the way it is. That happens. They also could be, and often do, give less for the trade. If you give $5,000 for a trade that's worth $6,000 as a usual trade-in value, aka the wholesale value is $6,000, but you end up giving the customer $5,000, that's an additional $1,000 profit made by getting the trade for less than they should have given. Well, that's part of the trust that goes on from not haggling in to begin with. You kind of get your guard down. You think, well, it's one price, so everything else is one price. They can still pack the payment when they're quoting your payments because you aren't as on your toes. They can take a slower approach, more time for F&I sales. It would not be unusual to find out that a person ended up paying more, all things considered, for the one-price car than the market average deal. Possibly a lot more because the guard is down. And, it's deceptive. The one-price system is just a marketing technique. It's just another way to get your trust, using that trust to take advantage of you. You can find one-price stores in every city. They advertise the simplicity, but the truth is the simplicity costs you and benefits them. Now, I'm not saying that all car dealers are bad that are one price. No, I'm not saying that at all. Some dealers like the one price more because they don't have to spend money on training and extra management and stuff, and they're trying to cut their overhead. And that's okay, But they also could use it to build trust, like I said. Even used car dealers do it, like Car Maximus. They have one price. This is one price. Think it's more believable. Yep, one price. Yep, and right on here, there's the market price. That's the market value. And these are the guys that advertise constantly. We'll pay more for your trade than anybody else. Well, if they're paying more than anybody else, they have to be selling it for more than anybody else to stay in business. And they're already one price. So you're only getting one price, but you're paying too much. Other selling systems are really negotiating programs, like you've heard of the one called the Foursquare. We talked about it before. The point of that system is to pick out the area of concern or objection or negotiation point, in a simple fashion, keeping it somewhat vague and allowing the dealer to cover all the bases, right? And one price that does not work into the equation because the pricing is firm. So one price isn't going to be able to do that. It's just one price. But they could back your payment. They could tell you payment's more than it is to get you in the F&I office and tell you something else. I don't see any particular system as dangerous. I'm not saying it's dangerous to the consumer as long as you follow the basics. If you follow what I'm talking about, they can't get to you no matter what they do. They just can't. So if you look at the bottom line, OTD, and shop it, you got nothing to worry about. It's just getting dealers to give you the price. That's why it's so important to do it by internet or by phone to start off with. And that's why you do that first before you go into talk price. Because you go in and talk price with your pockets full of information. You don't go in with your pockets empty and get their information. Nope. When you start getting payment quotes in a one-price store or a different method dealership, just politely stick to your guns and insist assertively on your answers. Months, amount, rate. Don't misunderstand the one-price policy at all as a reason to trust everything else or anything else. It's not. It's not a way for you to feel safer in the whole process. And it's not even a great deal. And if I was to go to a one-price store, I'd still try to negotiate with them. I'd make them, I'd make them work for it. I wouldn't buy that. I'd just use their numbers. In one price, that does not work into the equation because the pricing is firm. Any of it. And this is not to say, again, I just want to stress the point, this does not to say that the pricing policy or their program that they use is dishonest. They might be very honest. My point is that one price doesn't indicate anything honest or not. One price is not there for you to like or dislike. One price is there to eliminate the negotiation process for the dealer. And the dealer's hope is that by eliminating the negotiation process, he ends up with more. And you're hoping from eliminating the negotiation process that you end up for less because of this technique. And it's not going to work that way. It's never going to be where a one-price store is the lowest price. Nope. You're never going to run into that. There are many situations, but that's not one of them. There are many good and experienced salespeople, but they usually have very little control over price or negotiation process. So what happens is in a one price, they don't worry about any of that. And without negotiating, they don't spend the time on training. And unfortunately, what ends up getting cut away is the product knowledge in a lot of cases. Not always, but in a lot of cases. But if you do the due diligence, you're going to find that one price store, if you had to pick a store to go in and say, I'll take it, that would be where to go. It would be a one price store, but they're never going to be the best price. Never, never, never. The management usually sits in a glass enclosed office or tower and the salesperson goes back and forth. Be careful because one price stores add to the deal because of your trust. Trust is a big factor in a one price store. If you start trusting them and feel safe, you're not. I'm telling you right now. Other than that price that came off that sticker, you're not any different than anybody else. Nope, it's the same thing. Focus on OTD and CPI, right? Due diligence, always the due diligence. Don't be fooled by it. One price store is a way to get a price for your due diligence for comparison's sake. That's great, But don't think of it as anything more than that. Doesn't mean that they're any more trustworthy. It doesn't mean that they're going to give you any better deal on the finance. Doesn't mean they're going to give you a better deal on your trade. In fact, I'd be willing to bet, I can't prove this, but I'd be willing to bet that the trade value you get on your trade, the actual cash value, the wholesale value, not allowance, the actual wholesale value at a one-price store is generally lower than other stores because they're using it as a way to build their gross profit back. That's what I think. Anyway, so that's the story on one price at every dealership. And they're everywhere, that's for sure. Well, that's Deal Talk for this week. If you have a question or request or even a comment, be sure and get a hold of me and email me. You can or call me. Call-in's 407-801-4071. That's 407-801-4071. Or email dealtalkpodcast@gmail.com or dealtalkpodcast@mail.com. Please don't forget to do a review and do yourself a favor by getting a copy of The Informed Buyer from Amazon or Nook. Like I mentioned before, tell your friends and relatives, let them save you some money and thank you for it. Be careful that you're getting the Deal Talk podcast when you download a podcast. There's people out there that are trying to use the name Deal Talk to get their own podcast going. You know how it is. Anytime something's successful, everybody tries to jump on the bandwagon. My Deal Talk podcast is a picture of a car with a microphone in it on the emblem, when you're looking up the podcast. Don't be fooled by anything else that says Deal Talk for two guys looking out, sitting together, or because I'm just one guy, or, a big orange square that says Deal Talk. That's not me. That's, people trying to squeeze in on it, and you don't want bad information. And there's a lot of it out there, I'm telling you. There's a ton of bad information. I check it periodically, and the internet's filled with bad advice. There's no question about it. Very bad advice. Please don't forget to do a review. That's the important thing, right? Do a review and tell your friends and relatives. Those are the things not to forget. Tell them they'll save some money. You'll be your hero. However I can help you, you contact me and you'll hear from me. Nobody contacts me, doesn't hear from me. And remember, every payment you get should be CPI, complete payment information, the amount, the months, the rate, any required down payment, and get those terms every time they quote you a payment. And every price you get should be all in. Every single cost required to buy the vehicle. Tax, tag, dealer fee options. Every single cost has got to be in there. They call that OTD, out the door.